everybody. Welcome to this.
You want me?
Today we will. No. I sent a new one. I can send you one.
Okay, so I've been asked to give this introduction. So I think everyone knows him, but still, Ranchor Krishna Das. So I know him since like he's small child for the last 10 years, and he's been so always enthusiastic and so encouraging to all of us that at this age, the kind of knowledge base that he has, the kind of dedication he has, and the kind of resolve he has, the discipline he has, that I think many of us, the senior devotees, what we call ourselves, like senior from the age perspective, we don't have that. Like we don't have that. Once I asked him, like you don't respond my messages on WhatsApp and all. He said, "Bro, I don't use social media much." So anyways, today he has enlightened us with many lectures, many more, and there's one more today. And I'm so happy every time I see him doing this. I encourage, that gives me encouragement for my kids. All right, there you go.
Sooner or later, I will also be senior by age. It's a matter of time. So we'll start with Jai Radha Madhava, and then the presentation is pretty comprehensive. So we're gonna quickly do a Mangalacharya, and then we'll go on. Jai Radha Madhava.
स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्री राधा कृष्ण परमान् सहगना ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च
Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Vyayavacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Alright, so this Wednesday, December 11th, is the advent of the Bhagavad Gita. Sometimes known as Gita Jayanti. So we'll have a program in the temple on Wednesday, and then also we have a program on Saturday that is also dedicated to Bhagavad Gita. So to go for the hat trick, we're going to do one today as well. But briefly, the word Bhagavad Gita itself means the song of God. Bhagavad means of related to God, and Gita means song. Many of our, like in, there's a classical music called Sangita. It's Gita that means song. So today we are, can I have the slides? It might be a little easier. Yeah. So today we're going to break up, today's discussion is the glories of the Bhagavad Gita. I know many of you know Bhagavad Gita. Your mom read Bhagavad Gita, your grandmother memorized Bhagavad Gita. But but it's still very important for us to go through, and we're also going to discuss about why it's important not just to read, but to share the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. So first we'll describe why we should read Bhagavad Gita. And you can understand that everyone falls into one of three groups of people. The first is the spiritual seeker, and those are the ones who are looking for knowledge. Now, we actually can group a lot of people into this category, even seemingly materialists, because at the end of the day, everyone is looking for some spiritual knowledge. It says in that pamphlet, Krishna, the Reservoir of All Pleasure, that there are two types of people. People who are looking for Krishna, and people who don't know they're looking for Krishna. So everyone, even if they're apparently materialistic, they are craving a knowledge, craving a spiritual need that they're trying to fill with everything else. So that's one type of person. The second type is the culturally pious, those who are of Indian or Hindu backgrounds or Desi backgrounds, and they know a little bit about the Mahabharata, some other strong things, they know about Vedic culture or whatever, and they understand from a cultural perspective, they have an attachment to the Bhagavad Gita. And then there's many of you, the seasoned devotees of Krishna, who are trying to make further advancement on the path of spiritual life, and therefore they're trying to go closer to Krishna. So for the spiritual seeker, this will make sense why I'm coming into this. Would anyone like to read the quote on the screen?
Yeah, the Bhagavad Gita is meant to show how one can understand his spiritual existence and his eternal relationship with the Supreme Spiritual Personality, and to teach one how to go back home, back to Godhead.
Right. To the culture guys, one kid, that's all I'll read.
Yeah, this is the duty of every Indian, that you should learn Bhagavad Gita perfectly well and preach it. That is your duty, all Indians. This is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission.
And then the last quote for the seasoned devotee.
Bhagavad Gita can be read or heard many times, but because it gives great pleasure, the more one reads Bhagavad Gita, the more he gets the appetite to read and understand it, and each time he gets new enlightenment.
So you can understand from these three quotes, that for those who are still seeking knowledge, they haven't come yet to the platform of devotional service, Bhagavad Gita provides the knowledge they're looking for. And that because Bhagavad Gita came from India, those who have cultural familiarity with it, they can easily access it. But it doesn't stop there. Sometimes we think as devotees, okay, we've graduated from Bhagavad Gita, we don't need to keep reading it. But then Prabhupada says in this last quote that was just mentioned, that every time you read it, there's new enlightenment. It's interesting because compared to other religious texts, Bhagavad Gita is quite short. It's only 700 verses. But there's so much depth to each of these verses. There's so many new commentaries, new ways we can look at the verses to help us deepen our relationship with Krishna. So even if we are seasoned devotees, Bhagavad Gita is still for us. So you can establish clearly that Bhagavad Gita is for everyone. Does everyone not fall into one of the three categories mentioned? Okay, good.
No one.
All of us can say that Bhagavad Gita is for us. So the first thing is that we should all try and make an effort to read Bhagavad Gita daily. It's not on the slides, but I can bring it up. How many of you read Bhagavad Gita daily? Or weekly? Okay, on a regular basis. So there's a program called CHAD, Chapter a Day, where even if the idea is that there's a set chapter, and you just read the verses of the chapter, just the English translation of the verses. And there's a worldwide movement, so the whole world is on a certain chapter. And then you just, every day you can read the verses. It takes like 4 or 5 minutes, so it's not you have to sit down or whatever. That way you get to keep hearing the transcendental vibration of the Bhagavad Gita. For you, if you haven't started doing that, and you want something easy, simple, that might be something you can try. So, to the next part of our lecture, now we understand we have to read Bhagavad Gita, and it's important. So what does this Bhagavad Gita say? What I'm going to go through now is a medley of quotes that are big points of the Bhagavad Gita. Some of these are directly verses that are in English translation. If you want to say the verses, bonus points for you. I don't give anything for bonus points, but it's for Krishna. So. All right. Forgive my youthful humor.
Nice.
So first one, we are the spirit soul. We are not the body. In some ways it's a very simplistic idea, but it's actually one of the most groundbreaking ideas because this differentiates this book from any other book really out there. Because every other book is about improving the body or improving the material. When this quote comes in the second chapter, the very beginning of the Gita, it says, okay, everything on out is going to be about your soul and not about your body. So it's a very simplistic idea, and we hear it so many times that it kind of just starts to mesh into like nothing. But it's actually a very powerful idea. And there's a lecture by His Holiness Sachinandan Swami Maharaj. And when Srila Prabhupada and Ranchor went to London for the last time, this was I think in August 1977. He was very ill at this time. But Sachinandan Maharaj was a translator for the German books. He's of German descent. So he went into Srila Prabhupada with a bunch of other devotees. And he actually described that when he saw Srila Prabhupada, his dhoti fell because he was just so shocked about how sick Srila Prabhupada was. And Srila Prabhupada asked, what is the essence of all my instructions? And all the devotees said, I don't know, like chant Hare Krishna. And he said, no. And then somebody said, we should all worship Krishna. And Prabhupada said, that's not the essence. And then someone said, Yare deko tare koho Krishna upadesh. That we should just go and chant Krishna's names. And Prabhupada said, what is Krishna upadesh? Upadesh means instruction. What is the instruction of Krishna? And then Prabhupada finally said, the essence of all my instructions is we are the spirit soul, not the material body. Because that's the basis of everything. Even if we are worshiping God, but we still think we're the body, we're doing it on a material platform, that worship isn't going to fulfill the spiritual need that we're talking about. Only when we understand that this process is a spiritual process, that's the only time we will actually be able to relish the Bhagavad Gita. Next, the Bhagavad Gita says that we must get knowledge through the parampara. Anyone know this verse? Yeah. Yes, so we understand that we must get this knowledge through parampara. The word parampara means disciplic succession. This knowledge is passed down, passed down, passed down. We understand that most knowledge in this world is kind of ascertained in an ascending process. You go out and you try to find it. But spiritual knowledge is beyond the realm of our senses or our logic. We don't have the ability to speculate about God and get a correct answer. Or we can't see God or hear God with our mundane senses. So the only way to actually access this knowledge is to get it from a descending process. So we have to get Bhagavad Gita through the proper scholars and the proper descending specific succession as it is. That's the only way we're able to access it. Krishna is the source of all that exists. Anyone know this verse? Close. I mean, there's multiple verses. I was thinking about which literally translates to I am the origin of everything. I was thinking this morning actually about this slide, and Srila Prabhupada makes a very interesting point in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is another beautiful book that's here. And you'll notice that Srila Prabhupada usually doesn't say that in his books, he doesn't usually say that Krishna is God. He usually says Krishna is the absolute truth. And he makes a distinction that when you just say God, you're limiting it, oh, okay, he is the controller, which is only one portion of what Krishna is. But this verse says Krishna is the absolute truth. He is the source of everything. So this is that it actually, when we say the word source or when we say the word absolute truth, we are magnifying Krishna's position. We're not just saying, oh, he's the controller, but someone else created the world, someone else did this, someone else runs this. No, Krishna is the source and the basis of everything. That maximizes and gives him the accurate position. Another tenet of the Bhagavad Gita is the topmost yoga is devotion to the divine. Yogi Namapi Sarvesham. So this verse comes in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna describes a little bit about the process of Ashtanga yoga and other yogas, and then he says that the best type of yoga is actually devotion to the divine, devotion to Krishna. Does anyone know what the English word yoke means?
Union.
Union, yes, union. So the English word yoke comes from the Sanskrit word yoga. Yoga means to connect. Actually, even the word religion, when you break it down to Latin, it becomes re-ligato. Ligato means to link. So to relink with God, that's what religion is. So the whole point of yoga is to connect. But if you're connected, you can't connect with one thing. There has to be one thing connected with another. There have to be two individuals. So one of those individuals is us, and the other individual is Krishna. And we understand that of all the ways to connect to Krishna, the most sponsor one case of Bhagavad Gita. They have a rule in some temples that if your phone goes off during lecture, then you have to sponsor Bhagavad Gita. You're off the hook.
You get lots sponsored today.
What?
You get a lot of them sponsored today.
Yeah. Everyone turn on your phones today. So we understand that of all the ways to connect to Krishna, it is through devotion, it is through love. And that's similar to all of us. Most people don't like to be used for their wealth, or used or tried to understood, and they don't want to be manipulated. They just want to be loved and cared for. How many of us would prefer to be manipulated over loved and cared for? Okay, I don't think she's not raising her hand either. But yeah, we all want to be loved and cared for, and Krishna is no different. So the best way to connect with Krishna is through devotion, and that's what the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita says. Then it says, the Bhagavad Gita, that we should take shelter of the spiritual master. I'm going through this a little bit fast because they're high-level principles that honestly each one of these verses we could spend 2 or 3 classes on. But just to give an overview, a comprehensive overview, Krishna introduces in the 4th chapter the idea of a spiritual master, or taking shelter of someone who is learned. This kind of goes back to the point that we mentioned, that the knowledge has to come from a descending process, because we simply don't have the power to access spiritual knowledge on our own. So because we take shelter of the spiritual master, there's someone who's seen it, who's enlightened. It's another thing that you don't let medical practitioners, they don't just say, I went into the library, I found a textbook, I started reading, now let me perform surgery on someone. At least I hope they don't do that. But I know both of you have taken boards to prove that they don't do that. But yeah, so it shows that you have to go through an authorized system, and you have to learn from a person who knows what they're talking about. Even in the medical field, to continue that, there's always this idea of apprenticeship or residence. They're seeing what the attending physician is doing, and they're saying, okay, this is how they're making this diagnosis, this is how they're understanding this, and then the more senior doctor says, okay, you should go like this. When the patient says these things, you should note this symptom, and so on and so forth. You can tell that I'm not a doctor, but it's the same thing in spiritual life. When we are trying to ascertain spiritual knowledge, we need a person that guides us on how to live our life, and what actually is spiritual knowledge, and how do we apply it in a way that's relevant for us. The verse specifically mentions that we should do 3 things with a spiritual master. First, we should sit and listen. We should be submissive. There's no point to take another example of school. You're not going to learn much in school if every 5 seconds you're raising your hand and saying, I don't believe this, I don't believe this, I don't believe this. I think, at least in American schools, there's one kid that does that in every single class, and it infuriates everyone else. Like, please just stop talking. But yeah, we cannot be we can't come to spiritual knowledge with a challenging attitude. If we're always second guessing the authority and all those things, it's going to be difficult for us to actually ascertain that knowledge. So the first thing is we must accept that the person we're taking shelter from has something to offer that we haven't gotten ourselves. I mean, otherwise you shouldn't take shelter of them. It's like, you don't go to like some random, like, I don't know, like a Best Buy and start asking, can I like get a bachelor's degree here or whatever. You have to go to someone who's actually qualified to teach and to educate in order to go there. So you should understand that when you find somebody who's very senior and who's mature in their devotional practice, you should accept that they know more than you, and therefore you should understand that it makes sense to listen to what they say. The next thing is that you should ask questions to the spiritual master, or you should at least get some understanding of what the philosophy is. Our founder, Srila Prabhupada, he would dedicate a lot of time to questions and answers. And when devotees wouldn't ask questions, he would be like, okay, none of you understood. Because some of these ideas are new. They're not supposed to make sense on the first try. So it requires questions and answers in order to understand that. So we also should feel free to ask questions and to really understand the philosophy. And finally, we should also perform some service to the spiritual master. And it kind of, there's an interesting connotation with the word service, because sometimes it's seen as a menial, very like low position, but at the same time, you have this idea of like servant leadership. When you put yourself in a more humble position, you get more things done, etc. But what it really means is that these spiritual personalities, they have a mission, and service means assisting them in that mission. So, like Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, his Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, his mission was to print books. And so that's why Srila Prabhupada printed books, so that we could distribute them. All right. So, surrender to Krishna protects us from illusion. Do you know this verse? Yes, that's one. I was also thinking this is a nice verse. What? Yeah, that's also a wonderful verse. And then there's one verse, Devi Kesha Gunamai, Mama Maya Durataya, Mame Maya Prabhatante, Mayam Etam Dharatite. Krishna says in the 7th chapter that this material energy is very difficult to overcome because it's deluding everyone, and this power of illusion that's keeping us here, it's very difficult to overcome. But if you surrender to Krishna and you accept it, then it becomes very easy to overcome. That kind of goes on the lines we've been saying previously. The spiritual knowledge was the truth of the universe, or the truth of the creation is difficult to ascertain on our own. So when we take shelter of Krishna or his representatives as the spiritual master, we understand, we get the vision by them. It's easier that way. So it's difficult to try and do things on our own. The biggest message of Bhagavad Gita, arguably, is to accept Krishna's help and accept his devotees' help in trying to ascertain the reality. The next point is that we are governed by goodness, passion, and ignorance. So these are called the 3 gunas, or modes. But another translation of the word guna is a Sanskrit word, is ropes. And we understand that all of us, everyone in society is kind of controlled by these 3 influences in a variety of ways. Now, goodness can be, they're pretty self-explanatory, I don't have to go through all of them, but goodness is they're trying to do something noble, or they're trying to do something that's socially acceptable. Passion is that they're very focused on what will make them happy, even if it's not benefiting to others. And then ignorance is, it's just very like lethargy. It's very, you're not doing really anything productive with your life, in the sense that you're not really helping yourself, you're not really helping others, you're not doing good or bad, you're really just doing nothing. So all of us in the material world are governed at least slightly by these 3 modes. But like we just said, that surrender to Krishna protects us from illusion. Surrender to Krishna also protects us from the engagement of these 3 modes. And the Bhagavad Gita talks about how, pretty extensively discusses these modes and how we can overcome them. Another tenet is that surrender to Krishna is our ultimate duty. This picture right here is a picture of Draupadi. I think many of us may know this story, but for those who don't, there's in the Mahabharata, before the battle of Kurukshetra, there's a gambling match essentially that happens, and the good guys, the leader of the good guys is Yudhishthir. He starts gambling away literally everything, and long story short, there's the game itself is stacked against him. So his cousins are on the other side, the Kauravas, and they essentially, what ends up happening is Yudhishthir gambles away his wife. His wife is named Draupadi, and at that point, the Kaurava brothers, known for their cruelty, just to kind of, really show possession, because the woman has been gambled, so they may think, oh, it's our possession. So they start to try and disrobe her, quite literally disrobe her. Like now we hear, like in modern days, we hear like all these things, unfortunate things that are happening, all this unfortunate violence against women. Unfortunately, those times it was sort of the same situation. And Draupadi had really no way of her husbands couldn't protect her, her family couldn't protect her. This was in front of a lot of people, and while one or two people spoke up, many people were kind of complicit, and so she really didn't have anyone to protect. So she just raised her hands and called out for Krishna, and in that arena, Krishna manifested as an unlimited sari, and so the Kauravas kept trying to disrobe her, but there was always some cloth that was keeping her covered and not letting her be violated in this way. So it shows that surrender to Krishna is always our duty because it saves us at all times. At the end of the day, we understand that Krishna is our maintainer, and it's our duty to surrender to him to reconnect that process. Additionally, Krishna protects his devotees. That's another big portion of the Bhagavad Gita. And he also reciprocates nicely with his devotees. Here there's a picture of a saint in our Prabhupada named Gopal Bhatta Goswami. If you see on the altar, there's a picture, in the center, there's a picture on the far right of 6 individuals. One of those individuals is Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And to show that Krishna protects and reciprocates with his devotees, there's a nice pastime where Gopal Bhatta Goswami was worshipping the Lord in the form of a Shaligram Shila. How many of you, do all of us know or have some familiarity with it? Anyways, it's a stone, a very holy stone that has divine potency to it, but it is a stone at the end of the day. So if it's difficult, you can't really like how we have so many beautiful dresses and so many ornaments, you can't really do that with a stone. You
It's
just
the
put it
Radha
there.
Raman deity.
Yes. So he really wanted to worship Krishna in his actual form, in his 3-bending, beautiful form. Many of us really like the form of Radha Nektavar, and not all of us can relate with a stone, even though that stone does have divine potency. So he really prayed and prayed. And one day, he went to go and bathe in the river and came back, and one of his stones had actually manifested as a form of Krishna. So that deity is now named Radha Raman, and there's a nice temple in Vrindavan that if you ever go to Vrindavan, I think many of us have been or want to go soon, that's definitely a place to visit. It's always busy, and it's a very small deity, but it's a very adorable deity and very cute. But it shows that Krishna manifests in response to the desire of his devotee. Gopal Bhatta Goswami wanted to worship Krishna in the form of Krishna, not in the form of a Shaligram Shila, of a stone. So Krishna manifested himself like that. So after all this positive stuff, I'll bring in something more negative. The material world, temporary and miserable, is not important. So this is a kind of a shocking truth and is sometimes difficult to stomach because we're told that the world is a good place and etc. But we have to understand that everything in this world is temporary, and because it's not our natural habitat, it's not going to bring us happiness. The example is given. Can a fish be happy outside of water? No. You can give a fish a Tesla, you can give a fish a mansion, you can give a fish a good job at Microsoft or whatever. The fish is not going to be happy if it's not in the water. And that's kind of the reason why we can make this claim that the material world is temporary and it's miserable, because this is not our ultimate position. Our ultimate position at the end of the day is in the spiritual world. We're all spiritual beings, and therefore we are all fish out of water. Until we accept that and embrace the spiritual realm, then that's the only time we'll be able to actually experience true happiness. And that's one of the bigger aspects of the Bhagavad Gita, that we're in the wrong place. This is kind of like the Matrix. We're in the wrong place, and therefore we dedicate a lot of our energy into going to the right place. And the final tenet that we'll discuss today is 4 actions that we should do towards Krishna, and this is quoted twice actually. These 2 lines are quoted twice in the Bhagavad Gita to show their emphasis. One in the middle and once in the middle and once in the end. It's to remember, to serve, to worship, and to bow down. So obviously, when we remember God, there's so many things to remember about God, but when we remember Him, that's one way we re-access our spiritual form, by accepting, oh, this is Krishna, this is God, and He's worth remembering. You don't remember things that are not typically worth your attention, but by remembering Krishna, you give attention to Krishna. Additionally, along those lines, serving Krishna. You don't serve people you don't value. Only if you value someone do you provide service to. That's a similar line along worship. Worship specifically also refers to interacting with the physical form of the Lord, like the deity is here. It says that if Krishna is the absolute truth, He can do anything, and if He can do anything, He can appear anywhere. And if He can appear anywhere, He can appear in the form of the deities. So we also can worship. But finally, if we're not able to do any of that, we can also just bow down, or even not physically, but just offer feelings of submission. But sometimes, it's a very heavy idea, because you're like, wait, I'm bowing down to something, I'm giving myself, I'm being submissive towards something. But when you think about it, it makes sense. If there's anyone we offer submission to, it should be God. We offer submission to a lot of people in this world, our boss, our professors, the government, all these other things. But these people, while they may have good intentions, they don't have the ability to reciprocate with us the way Krishna can. So if there's anyone we should be submissive towards, it is Krishna. So I hope that wasn't too much. I wanted to provide a high-level overview of some of the contents of the Bhagavad Gita. If you want to know more, we have Bhagavad Gitas in many places. They're not here, but we do have Bhagavad Gitas for you to read. And it's something kind of interesting because there's not a real Spark Notes version of the Bhagavad Gita. And it kind of goes to what I was talking about earlier, that the Bhagavad Gita is full of ways you can get enlightened. Every word and every line can provide new meaning when you read it in a different way. Your circumstances might be different, or you may be more mature at a certain time. But you really can understand. So this overview is not something you can say, okay, now I know what Bhagavad Gita is, because there's so much more depth to it. These are just things that I personally think are important teachings, and I encourage you to read the Bhagavad Gita in its fullness to actually engage with that nectar. So, now that we've discussed about reading the Bhagavad Gita, why it's important to read, now, okay, we decided, okay, it's important to read, what does it say? But there's also this aspect that we should share the Bhagavad Gita. We should share the knowledge that's given in this spiritual teachings. So we'll just go into why book distribution, or distribution of knowledge, is something that's really valuable. First, to define book distribution, it's the welfare activity of giving knowledge. So what we try to do throughout the year, but especially now, we try and give people understanding that the philosophy and the richness of the Bhagavad Gita. And it's the Bhagavad Gita is not just appreciated by us, the devotees of Krishna, but it's appreciated by so many modern thinkers as well. On the back of the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Mahatma Gandhi, additionally Albert Einstein, Tupac, Martin Luther King, so many different people from so many different walks of life have appreciated the Bhagavad Gita due to its knowledge. So when we are talking about the distribution of Bhagavad Gita and the distribution of books in general, talking about giving spiritual knowledge to those who don't have access to it yet. So I did use the word welfare activity, and how many of you, who benefits the most from a welfare activity typically?
The
Deprived
person who is giving.
person who's getting it.
Person who's getting it. That's the correct answer,
Yeah.
but for now we'll just... Yeah, so in a traditional welfare activity, the person who is on the receiving end, so say you're giving food to somebody, the person who is receiving the food is the one benefiting the most from it. But in the case of giving transcendental knowledge, it said that book distribution is high sadhana. The word sadhana means to practice. So once you're on the spiritual path, you perform sadhana. You try and practice something to achieve a goal. And it said, Srila Prabhupada said that book distribution is high sadhana. The activity of giving knowledge to others is itself a very high, commendable thing, not for other people, but for ourselves. Because every time you talk about the Bhagavad Gita, you're speaking about Krishna. Every time you think about distributing it, you're also thinking about Krishna. All these things, when you're trying to give knowledge to other people, you have to kind of be very well versed in that knowledge itself. Like even for those who, like even for normal salesmen, even if it's a Sunday night, they're not working, they're going to know about the product they're selling because they have to sell it. So obviously, like what we're doing when we talk about distributing Bhagavad Gita, it's not a sales activity. It's more of an activity to give knowledge. But because you are making an effort to display this knowledge and present this knowledge, you're kind of forced to immerse yourself in this knowledge. So that's important. Additionally, it makes Srila Prabhupada smile.
Go back once.
Oh, whoops. Makes Srila Prabhupada smile. Srila Prabhupada said on one occasion, if you want to please me, distribute my books. Because Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya, his mission was to come to all over the world and distribute the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. And by giving books, giving spiritual literature, we are doing the exact same thing. We're following in his footsteps. So it pleases Srila Prabhupada, and actually, our whole lineage is the lineage of the book. We shouldn't think that this idea of giving knowledge is something recent. We've been doing this since the time of Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva said, okay, in this Stone Age, people can't remember things a lot. Even the last 40 years, you could remember people's birthdays, people's cell phone numbers. Now it all has to be on a phone. And then when people put their birthday on Facebook wrong and you wish them, I left my Facebook for this on my real one. But yeah, so everything has to be there. So our memory, when Vyasadeva, a saint in our lineage, said, okay, the next generation, the memory is not as strong, let's put them into writing. And from there, books have been written and written and written. And even in 1896, another individual, another spiritual personality in our lineage, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he wrote a book called The Life and Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And he sent that book to McGill University in Montreal. So they have that our whole lineage actually is just about giving knowledge in the form of books. And this kind of goes on to the next point I'd like to make, that it is our family business. There's a book called, this is not a particularly high resolution image of the book, but there's, what?
Vaisheshikadas.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's by His Grace Vaisheshika Prabhu, who is essentially our modern day Sankirtanacharya, the authority on distributing Srila Prabhupada's books now. But he titles the book Our Family Business. So by the way, if you want to, if you think that anything I've said, at least 1 minute of it has been something that's valuable, and you think that giving knowledge to other people is something that's worth doing, then I would highly recommend purchasing and reading this book, because it not only talks about the skill and the intensity of it, but also talks about the mood in which one should do it and the benefits of it. So it's really comprehensive.
We have it in stock.
We have some in stock. So how many copies?
At least 6, 7 I have.
Okay, at least 6 or 7. So there's more than 6 or 7 people in here, so you have to bid high.
And we can get more.
And we can get more, yeah. They still print it. But I was thinking that the title Our Family Business is quite an interesting title, because we can all understand that all of us in some way, like a family who runs a family business, all the kids benefit from that business. Not just monetarily, but they also get a lot of skills just by working at the business, etc. That all of us have some sort of a debt to pay to the distribution of Srila Prabhupada's books. I'll just do a quick survey. You're on the hot seat now. How many of you came to the spiritual life because of book distribution? Someone distributed a book to you. How many of you, keep your hands up, how many of you came to spiritual life because your parent or your spouse got a book? Okay. How many of you came to spiritual life because the person who mentored you came because of book distribution? Keep your hands up. Okay, maybe you don't have to keep your hands up because it's going to be a long time. How many of you have somebody who you take a lot of inspiration from who came from book distribution? If you're inspired by His Holiness Chandramoli Swami Maharaj, please raise your hand. His Holiness Devamita Maharaj, raise your hand. Swami Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj, raise your hand. Vaisheshika Prabhu, raise your hand. How many of us have taken spiritual initiation from somebody who came through book distribution or fell into any of these categories above? Okay, so I think most people raise their hands at least once. And all of us can say that these personalities that we all established came at least indirectly through book distribution have helped us, which means that we have a debt to pay back to this activity of giving knowledge to others. Because we have benefited, because somebody gave someone else a book. Someone made the effort to give someone knowledge. Because we benefited from that act, we have some sort of responsibility to pay it forward. We pay back our debt by paying it forward, by making an effort to give this book to someone else. I also think the title, Our Family Business, is also striking because in our spiritual movement, we have a lot of different services, a lot of different activities. And in the same way, the kids who run a family business, they may go and become a doctor. They may not work in the family business. But when the time comes, they're all going to come back to their family business and they'll help out in some way, every single time. And I think those who know people who run family businesses, they see that their kids, even if they do something completely different, like let's say the family business is like a trade shop or something like that, and their kid becomes a doctor. Their kid will always come back when they have the annual dinner. They'll always come back and do something for the family business. Not that they're not going to give their whole life to it, but they're going to do something. And in the same way, all of us have benefited so much from our family business and book distribution, but we may be engaged in various services. But we all have an obligation, because our lineage comes from the distribution of knowledge. We all have an obligation to continue this activity. On that note, I also thought of something this morning, and I thought it was a very interesting topic, that for some reason, if you didn't raise your hand at any of the other 60 questions I asked before, all of us, from a practical perspective, do have something to benefit from Srila Prabhupada's books. For those who don't know the history of ISKCON, in the 70s, the mid-70s, as our movement was gaining a little bit more popularity, all of a sudden, some, especially in America, some forces called the deprogrammers didn't like it because they really didn't know what was going on. It was something completely new. It's not like now where Indian culture, at least people know what Indian culture is, they know what Indian food is, or they think they know what Indian food is. But they had no experience. So this new thing was coming. There's these people wearing dhotis and kurtas and saris, and they're like, what's going on? So there's actually a case filed against ISKCON saying that this is a cult, and therefore this organization should be stopped. It's not good, causing harm to society, and so much. This was during Srila Prabhupada's time. And the devotee who was kind of in New York, who was representing ISKCON, came to Srila Prabhupada and said, Srila Prabhupada, there's a legal court case against us. And they actually chose the prosecution. They actually chose a judge who they knew would be very, who was known for not supporting things like this, who was more traditionalistic, who wasn't open to new ideas. They were really stacking the deck against the Krishna consciousness movement. So this devotee went to Srila Prabhupada and said, Srila Prabhupada, what should I do? And Srila Prabhupada didn't say, hire a fancy lawyer and use some loophole saying this is not a cult, this is bona fide religion, whatever. He said, you go on the first day, open the Srimad Bhagavatam, and speak on the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this devotee said, what should I do the next day? And he said, go to the second verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and speak on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada said, if you have to go for 18,000 days, go for 18,000 days. That's how many verses there are in the Srimad Bhagavatam. But speak from the books. this is not legal advice for anything else. You get a speeding ticket.
It's easy.
I don't know if the Bhagavad will help you with your speeding ticket or whatever. But in this case, what ended up happening was, this went on for 7 days, not 18,000. 7 days, and the judge was like, okay, you can stop now. And then the rest of the trial continued, and it was decided that the Hare Krishna movement was a bona fide religion. And also there is some logic to that. The main thing is that people, the idea of a cult is this new thing that is being used to manipulate people. But when the legal system, the lawyers and the judges understood that no, this isn't just a new age thing, this is just some new trend. This is a system that's been practiced for thousands of years in the East. This is a bona fide system that has philosophical grounding. There was no basis to call this movement a cult. So we can see clearly that even all of this room would not be here today if that devotee did not go and say, and speak from the Srimad Bhagavatam and say, this movement is a bona fide religious organization. That this movement is bona fide. That we all owe a debt at least to that. So because of that, we do have a responsibility to pay back and a debt to pay back. Additionally, His Holiness Kadambakana Swami Maharaj says that book distribution is like a cold shower. Okay, maybe I should have given this in the summer, but it says that a cold shower energizes you in your own spiritual practice. And when you go out and you try and give individuals, even if you don't go, you try and make an effort to give the knowledge that you've received, that helps enthuse you more, especially when you see people take it. Srila Prabhupada is a very avid book distributor, and so many devotees have made the efforts. When they see people are accepting this knowledge, it makes them more enthusiastic to take it. It makes them say, okay, other people are seeing value in what I'm doing. I should redouble on my own activities. So book distribution has a unique potency to really energize you in your own life. It makes sense when you're giving something and you see people value it. Then you're like, yeah, okay, this stuff is pretty cool. I should actually practice it more. So it actually helps us even more. On that note, Sankirtan is spiritual oxygen. It really does help us. The act of giving is extremely important for us. Otherwise, it stays stale. It says that when water is constant, it starts to smell and it starts to accumulate dust. But when water is moving, it doesn't smell it. It cleans. And that's the same way. Water is like knowledge. If it just stays with us, it becomes stale. But if we make an effort to give it to other individuals while working on ourselves and working on our own advancement, it actually starts to provide good process. The third way of saying it is that we grow by giving. When we make the effort to provide other people knowledge, Krishna sees that. And I heard a nice example that say like a mother has 2 kids, and one of these kids is always a little disobedient, and the other kid tells this disobedient kid, we should listen to our parents. You know, like they're trying to. Sorry, let's not look at people. We should listen to our family. We should. You know, what they're saying is valid. Everything they're saying is good. And we should listen to the parents. How happy the parents feel. They're like, you just did my job, and I didn't have to look bad for it. So maybe I shouldn't go home today. But,
You're talking myths now.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. It's that Krishna sees, okay, all of us are his children, and some of my children have made an effort to bring other children closer to him, and therefore Krishna is very pleased. Now, there's a few more slides. Yeah, I have time. So, we understand that books are also spoken kirtan. You may have heard the word Sankirtan be used, which technically means chanting. But this is all about knowledge. Why is it called Sankirtan? And a wonderful explanation for this is that the books are telling you to do one thing, and that is to chant Hare Krishna. So we typically ascribe the word kirtan to chanting Hare Krishna. But when you're giving people books to tell that say chant Hare Krishna, it's the same thing as chanting Hare Krishna. So it's in the same way, books are spoken kirtan. In fact, Srila Prabhupada gave the title of one of the names of book distribution is called Brihat Mridanga. Mridanga is this drum right here, and Brihat means big. So it says it's a kirtan that doesn't require a sound system, which would be good for our temple specifically. But it doesn't all over the world. This knowledge can be broadcasted. Actually, quickly one story. There was one occasion where a sailor he was originally from Russia, and then he docked in Melbourne for something. So like they don't want to stay on the ship forever, so they went out to the streets. A book distributor met him, and he distributed a book to him. So then this sailor was going up, and the next stop was London. So he's like, okay, why not I read this book? And while on the way to London, he was like, whoa, this stuff is really cool. So then he docked in London, went to the temple, took prasadam met the devotees, and finally he went back and docked in Moscow, and from there he became a devotee. So that book was distributed in Australia, but made waves in Moscow. Another thing that is important for all of us is that drops of water make the ocean. We think, oh, there's so many people out there, and we have so many things to do. How are we going to do it all ourselves? We understand that we don't have to do it all ourselves. Drops of water make the ocean. If all of us collectively put a little bit of effort into it, a really big impact can happen. It doesn't require any few people to put a lot of strain on themselves. It requires just everyone to pitch in as a little bit. Now, the contrary to that is drops of nothing make nothing. But if no one does anything, then nothing really happens. So we just all have to do a little bit, and we can really make a big impact in spreading knowledge. Additionally, I mentioned this briefly previously, but the first and last instruction of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya, was to print books. The first time he said, if you get money, print books. The last time he said, if you get money, print books. So it kind of goes into the fact that it comes in our parampara, it comes in our lineage. It's an activity that our predecessor acharyas, our predecessor teachers have done, and therefore we should continue. Finally, we understand that this activity is the greatest welfare activity. There are many types of welfare, giving food, giving all of those things, and those are all noble in their own right. But it's kind of like that analogy that if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. If you teach a man to fish, then he eats for a lifetime, and you make him a devotee and he'll never fish again. But it's kind of the idea that if you give people material things, they're satisfied now. But if you give them spiritual knowledge that clears the root of all their material miseries, they are forever satisfied. When we understand this positive Krishna consciousness is what all of us actually need, and that when we get elevated to the spiritual world, we don't face these miseries. That's the ultimate solution. So when we give people this ultimate solution, that it really benefits from people. Finally, one last thing before we go on to how we're doing things in Columbus, is that we should understand that Lord Chaitanya will sign the check. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna, and we will all put our efforts. And we may think, people won't accept this, it's a little odd, it's weird, but if we put the effort, Lord Chaitanya will sign the check. Not every check that you put in, but this one specifically. Lord, if you put the effort to give spiritual knowledge, Lord Chaitanya will reciprocate with that. He will sign the check. So finally, we'll discuss how we are distributing Bhagavad Gita. If you've been here any of the last, 6 Sundays now, we've made announcements regarding the Bhagavad Gita Marathon. Every center in ISKCON has a December drive to distribute as many Bhagavad Gitas as possible. And Columbus is no different. Our goal is 1,200 Bhagavad Gitas. There's many ways you can participate. I hope at least one of you are convinced, or at least slightly convinced. You can join us hand in hand and give books to people. We go to grocery stores, we go on the street, probably not now because it's cold, or we go door to door and we ask people to take spiritual knowledge. And people are actually really receptive of it. Sometimes people get scared, like, oh, this is a little odd, but you see people are actually extremely receptive. And they're really, really touched because no one really makes an effort these days to give something to people. So you can come out with us and really change people's lives, and you'll see people are pretty happy. But at the very least, even if you don't feel any of the other emotions that we described, it's nice to go out and talk. Additionally, if you think it's cold outside, which it is, you can call people from your own house. Over the years, we've collected a lot of contacts. And we have been just calling people and asking, hey, do you want a Bhagavad Gita if you don't have one? Do you know anyone that wants a Bhagavad Gita? Or would you be willing to sponsor Bhagavad Gita so that other people who can't afford it, who don't have access to it, can have those? Additionally, there's a new initiative called corporate book distribution. So we can also sell books in bulk to motels and yoga studios. a lot of these places. How many of you guys have been to a motel room and seen in the drawer there's a Bible there? There's a big initiative to place Bhagavad Gitas there as well. So far there's been over 1 million Bhagavad Gitas placed in motels all across the country. So we're going to help them do that. We're going to continue that. It's a new initiative this year. So it's something similar if you'd like to just call motels, or even if you're not able to call them, you should know an owner of a motel or owner of a yoga studio. You can just give those leads to us and we can call them. And then just say like, hey, would you like to take some Bhagavad Gitas to place in your areas? Also, you have the option to sponsor Bhagavad Gitas. It's $5 for a case for southbound for Bhagavad Gita, and a case comes to 24. That's 120, or $12 for hardbound. So, just you can give some money, and we'll distribute the books on your behalf. And also, backed by popular demand, are book bundles. So it is the holiday season, so people do like getting gifts and also getting food. So what we did in the past is we created a bundle system where we would make a little gift bag with the Bhagavad Gita small book and then some fresh prashadam cookies. And these are like good cookies, and a few other things. And devotees would give them to their neighbors with a nice card. And people really appreciated it. We couldn't recover the cards today, but people said, like no one does this anymore. No one just gives these books, gives gifts for free, and they really appreciate it and they value it. Oh, my neighbor went out of their way to give me something. Because it's a little bit more, if you'd like to purchase these, we'll be assembling them soon. So just talk to me if you'd like to reserve a few for your neighbors. They're $10 per bundle because it's more than that. And they're $50 for 6 bundles. I was gonna name this class "How to Get a Six-Pack for $50." I decided against that. That would be too inflammatory. But anyways, so if you were interested in that, and while I'm racing against the clock every time this happens. But while we're discussing this, there's a new initiative by the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, the organization that publishes all these books, called the Start With One Challenge. This is meant for people who are under 25, not people who feel like they're less than 25. But for the next generation, all of us illustrious youth, I guess, we have the option to distribute Bhagavad Gita, and it's counted in a special tally. So if you're younger than 25, or you know someone younger than 25, and they perform the act of giving knowledge to somebody else, then they should let us know, and there's a specific tally for that. There's also resources to inspire you all in this activity. So that is all I have. I've been giving, if the last slides look familiar, I used them last week at the announcements, but there's something very special happening at the announcements today regarding this. I will make an announcement, but there's going to be somebody other than me speaking. So please do come for that. I don't see anyone who's going to come for this and not come for Prashadam, so you guys will be there. But please do, there's something special at the announcements. In the 60 seconds I have, are there any questions?
So comments. So I just wanted to tell you that it's one of the most wonderful discourses I have attended. So really thank you so much, Ranchor. Very nice, it's very inspiring. And just a quick, in a few seconds, I just want to tell you that how I became interested in book distribution. As you said, books really, that's how I understood ISKCON and the philosophy and everything. But when I came to US, I had never really distributed books to anybody. And it's scary, as you said, when you're trying to do it the first time. So this was outside a grocery store in Florida. And I just went inside, and somehow that day I felt inspired. We had books in the car. And I thought, people are suffering so much and not needing anything. Let's try to do something. So, and I didn't know what would, but when you're trying for the first time, I think Krishna gives that extra mercy. So I took those books, and one lady comes, first lady who comes out, I give her some books, and this is what she said. Where were you guys? I was looking for these books. It was so wonderful. She called her child, and they took more books, and it was wonderful. And I just...
Yeah, people are looking for this knowledge. Like we said at the very beginning, there are two types of people. They're either looking for Krishna, or they don't know they're looking for Krishna. And a lot of people are looking for this knowledge. On a similar note, I'll give one more pastime. Some stories about distributing books are very enticing, very, very enlightening. But this comes from the Toronto Temple president. His name is Srila Prabhupada. He was going on Sankirtan after a really long time, after the book distribution leaders said we need to come on Sankirtan. And so he and his wife were driving. They were going to the place they were going to go and distribute books, and they took a wrong turn onto the opposite side of a one-way. So the cops came and they stopped them. But his wife was in the passenger seat and holding all these books. So the cop asked this is also not an example of follow, but the cops asked his wife, "What are you carrying? What are these books?" And she said, "Oh, we're about to go and distribute some spiritual literature. We're going to give books to people. So these are the books that we're going to give." So the cop asked, "What are their books?" And she explained, and the cop said, "I've been looking for this the whole time." And probably the first time ever that a cop has pulled someone over for a legitimate reason, instead of someone paying money to the cop for a speeding ticket, the cop took out his wallet and said, "Here's $50, give me the books you have." The moral of the story is to always carry books in your car so you turn on a one-way. But yeah, it's always enticing to see that people actually are looking for this knowledge, and it's not some thing that people don't care. I mean, obviously there's some people that may not appreciate it, but the ones who do appreciate it, when you give it to them, you feel really inspired to see how much they were doing something. It's kind of like when you see somebody, it's like how people feel when they do CPR on someone. They took this one course 10 years ago, and then someone actually needed it. They feel so fulfilled. It's something along those lines. Somebody was looking for this knowledge, and therefore they got fulfilled. Because you made the effort to do it. So I don't think anyone has any questions. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. But that's, I guess, what I'm for today. Thank you all for listening. Thank you very much.
Ranchor Prabhu ki jai.
Yeah. We'll move the mats to the back.